contradictions in the colonial experience. Overview of imperialism.
So now let's examine how imperialism affected East Asian countries and their foreign relations with each other.
What constitutes an empire?
So as an overview, we had the Spanish and the Portuguese empires that were established, followed by the British and the Dutch empires, and then the French Empire. And by the time imperialist encroachment began in Asia. We saw the British, the Dutch, and the French predominantly around the 18th, 19th centuries. In this map, you can see how various countries had set up empires throughout the world, including in Asia. So, for example, there were the British in India and the Dutch in Indonesia. The French would later come in to set up Indochina. And then there was further encroachment and informal types of empires set up further into China, the Qing Empire. Looking specifically at imperialism in Asia, there were many different forms and types of imperialism, informal colonies, formal colonies. But as Japan looked at Western empires and saw that they had created empires for themselves which gave them access to all kinds of resources, Japan also decided to build their own empire as well. But because East Asia was one of the last areas to be colonized in the 19th century, the question became for already well-established empires such as the British and the French, why should we go in and colonize, and what is the purpose, and what is the justification? And so they started to implement different types of colonization, but still the underlying fundamental principle for imperialism is either the takeover of the country in a political sense or the takeover and dominance of a country economically and culturally. And so this is what we see happening in East Asia beginning in the 19th century, and what we see depicted in this very famous political cartoon is the pie of China being carved up by imperialist powers, including Britain, Russia, Germany, France, and Japan. And really, it's important for us to understand that as imperialism developed over the centuries, the point was to go in and extract resources that would help and support the empire. That was the main objective. The objective is not to go in and help develop the colony so that it becomes a self-sufficient entity. No, the colony exists to assist and support the empire. And so this is what we see exactly happening in East Asia as well. By the time we get to 1914, we see that many parts, if not most parts of the world, had been colonized by various Western imperial powers. Even the United States began to participate in this, even though they were very much a latecomer to the imperialist game. So, for example, in 1893, the United States overthrew the Hawaiian monarchy, dissolved it, and then formally annexed it in 1988. They would also do the same in the Philippines. So whereas the Philippines had traditionally been a Spanish colony, there were independence activists in the Philippines, and the US initially cooperated with them and then decided that they would strike a deal with the Spanish in order to take over the Philippines.
These are the keywords for this class: empire, colonization,